For 50,000 years, the stars had been quiet. No Terran ships roamed the void. No human voice spoke in the galactic channels. Only the memory of their fury lingered, a whisper that haunted every civilization. To most, the Terrans were ghosts, long dead, burned out in their final wars. Their world had been reduced to ashes, their people scattered and hunted. The great armistice had ended it all. The galaxy called it peace. But peace built on fear never lasts. The aliens told themselves stories about humanity, the angry apes who burned 1,000 worlds just to win one war, the savages who fought gods and refused to kneel. They remembered the Terran fleets, black as night, that had once split stars open with their rage. And when those fleets finally fell silent, the galaxy sighed with relief. They called it the 50,000-year armistice. 50,000 years without war, without the sound of human thunder. The younger races grew up believing the humans were myths. Boogamen, they called them, war ghosts, a bedtime threat for alien children who misbehaved. But the elders knew better. The old commanders, the ancient species who had seen the wars firsthand, never forgot. They remembered the day Earth burned and refused to die. They remembered the final message that echoed through every comm channel before the silence began. We will return when you forget why you feared us. And now they had forgotten. The conquered was vast now, a council of 12,000 worlds united under the same banner. They ruled the galaxy in comfort, believing themselves untouchable. Their fleets guarded every system, their colonies stretched across 10 spiral arms. They thought they had outgrown war. Until the signals began. They were faint at first. Old Terran code, ancient, corrupted transmissions that shouldn't have existed. Some dismissed it as interference. Others whispered the unthinkable, that the humans were alive. The conquered High Council met in the skies above the planet Thalrun, a world of golden clouds and endless light. They gathered in a hall that hung above the stratosphere, surrounded by the hum of power and politics. High Chancellor Zyron of the Eltari rose from her chair, her chitin plates glimmering. "The transmissions are a trick," she said coldly. "Humanity was wiped out. The archives confirm it." Across from her, the scaled warlord of the Kersh hissed softly, "And if it's not a trick, then we will finish what our ancestors began." The chamber buzzed with pride and fear. The old bloodlines, the ones who still remembered the war, looked uneasy. They knew what happened the last time someone finished humanity. Still, arrogance won the vote. The conquered declared the armistice void. A new war began with a single message, broadcast across every system. The conquered hereby ends the Treaty of Saul. The Terran species, if any remain, are to be purged. Let the galaxy be cleansed of their shadow. Billions of alien voices cheered. Fleets assembled. War drums beat across the stars. And deep in the dark of space, humanity woke. Beneath the surface of the moon, what was once Luna, metal stirred. A light flickered to life, cutting through the dust of centuries. Then another. Then thousands. Buried under the regolith were hangars, reactors, and sleeping titans of steel. Vast ships, entombed for ages, whispered back to life as systems reconnected. Data links reawakened. Artificial minds stretched after millennia of silence. One voice echoed through the empty corridors of an ancient warship. A female voice, calm but edged with old pain. "System check complete. Signal confirmed. The armistice has been broken." The ship's hull glowed faintly with re-entry heat as it rose from beneath the lunar crust. Its name, half buried under the dust, read TSF Valkyrie Lance. From the dark side of the moon, it rose into sunlight, followed by others, hundreds then thousands. Silent warships, black as the void, emerging like ghosts. Below, Earth turned slowly. Blue oceans sparkled where once they had boiled. The world had healed. Humanity had survived, hidden, patient, waiting. Cities gleamed beneath restored skies, covered by cloaking veils that had kept them invisible to alien sensors for millennia. They had rebuilt everything, and they had remembered everything. In the command center of the Valkyrie Lance, Admiral Helena Rourke stood alone, staring at the Earth she had sworn to protect and avenge. Her uniform was black, marked with the emblem of the United Terran Defense Command, a silver gauntlet holding a broken chain. She had lived a long time, far longer than a natural human should. Gene forging, cryonics, neural preservation, the technology of vengeance. Now she watched as alien fleets entered the Sol system. They came in endless formation, filling the sky like a plague of locusts. The first warships of the conquered glittered with arrogant beauty, their hulls painted in gold and white. The sight made her lips curl into a bitter smile. They never learned. Her second officer, a synthetic intelligence named Ghost, projected beside her. Admiral, conquered forces have declared war. Their fleet numbers approximately 1.4 million vessels. Do we have authorization? Ghost paused. By the armistice protocols, we do. Clause 0, retaliation in the event of conquered aggression. Rourke turned toward the massive viewing window, where the enemy fleet began to align its weapons. Then let's remind them what they buried. Across every hidden Terran base, from Mars to Titan, from the shattered colonies beyond Neptune, ancient systems came online. Planetary railguns recharged. Drone armies awakened. Defense satellites unfolded their weapon arrays like flowers of death. Old banners unfurled across holographic skis, united Earth, never again. And when the first alien broadcast entered human space, a declaration of peaceful surrender if the humans disarm, the response came cold and clear. Armistice concluded, retaliation authorized. The message was broadcast on every channel in every known language and carried one symbol the galaxy had hoped to never see again: a red planet with a white ring, the insignia of Terran command. For the first time in 50 millennia, every alien race felt it again. That deep, primal terror that had once shaken the stars themselves. The feeling that something unstoppable was coming. High above the edge of Sol, the fleets faced each other, the proud armada of the conquered, and the silent ghosts of humanity. The air crackled with tension, even across the vacuum. Then, for a moment, everything was still. And Admiral Rourke, with the calm of someone who had waited her whole life for this, whispered a single word. Fire. From the heart of Mars, a light brighter than the sun erupted. The ancient cannon buried beneath Olympus Mons, Project Helios, awoke for the first time in 40,000 years. The beam crossed the void in seconds, tearing through the flagship of the conquered fleet. There was no explosion, no debris, the ship simply ceased to exist. The war had begun, and humanity was smiling. The first beam from Mars split the darkness like a god's spear. Where the flagship of the conquered had once stood, there was only drifting dust, atoms turned to light. 1,000,000 alien ships saw it happen, but none believed it. It was too fast, too clean, too final. Silence rippled through the void, then panic. They fired first. Shields failed. The Terrans, they're real. Across 100 command decks, alien admirals shouted orders that made no sense. They fired in every direction, blinded by fear and arrogance. They had come expecting a ghost. Instead, they had woken a storm. From behind the moon, the Valkyrie lance moved like a predator breaking from its cage. Her dark hull shimmered with energy. Around her, 1,000 Terran warships unfolded from invisibility, ships older than entire empires, cloaked in silence for millennia. Each ship bore a name from the old wars: Iron Resolve, Eternal Vigil, Spirit of Sol, Red Horizon. Each name was a wound in the galaxy's memory. They advanced without formation, without hesitation. Humanity had no need for ceremony, only vengeance. Admiral Helena Rourke stood on the command deck of the Valkyrie lance, the glow of battle burning across her face. Targets locked, reported Ghost, the AI whose voice was as calm as death. Return fire, she said softly. Her words were barely above a whisper, but the ship obeyed like a living thing. The first volley tore through space. Mass driver cannons thundered, launching tungsten rods the size of towers at near light speed. They hit with the force of mountains. Alien shields, once thought unbreakable, shattered like glass. The second volley came before the aliens could even regroup. Plasma lances stabbed through cruisers, slicing them in half. Torpedoes screamed through space like angry stars, weaving through enemy fire to find their marks. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. The Conquered's commander, High Admiral Cather of the Zykal, watched the horror unfold from his throne-like command chair. His golden carapace trembled as explosions consumed his fleets. How are they doing this? He demanded. Our readings say impossible power levels, cried his sensor officer. Their weapons, they break every law of energy balance. Cather slammed a clawed hand against the armrest. No, they cheat. They always cheat. He turned to his captains on the holographic network. All ships converge on the human flagship, overwhelm them by numbers. They cannot stop us all. Across the stars, millions of ships obeyed. They swarmed forward like a tidal wave of light. Rourke watched it come. Her expression didn't change. All hands, she said, her voice calm. Brace for contact. The conquered fleet fired everything. Plasma storms, antimatter shells, graviton pulses. A rain of destruction that filled the void. When the storm cleared, the Valkyrie lance was still there. Not a scratch. Its armor, forged in forgotten forges beneath Europa's ice, drank the energy like water. Its shields flared once, then dimmed again, indifferent. Ghost's voice broke the silence. Admiral, the enemy fleet has entered optimal range for counterattack. Rourke's lips curved into something between sorrow and fury. Let them remember us. The human fleet unleashed everything. Mass cannons fired in perfect rhythm, each shot synchronized through quantum command links. Enemy formations disintegrated. When alien dreadnoughts tried to retreat, drones shaped like blades cut their escape routes, detonating inside their hulls. The Conquered's endless armada became fire and ruin. Rourke watched the data feed, ship after ship disappearing from the sensors, and felt no joy, only inevitability. You should have left us alone, she whispered. On the planet Thalrun, the Conquered Council received the first images of the Sol battle. The footage was silent, transmitted through the chaos of collapsing relays. They saw their fleets burning. They saw human ships moving through the debris like hunters in a sea of corpses. They saw the impossible precision, the cold beauty of destruction. The chamber fell quiet. Counselor Murrin of the Lothan looked pale, her translucent skin trembling. How many ships have we lost? The aide who answered her voice was shaking. Initial estimate, 600,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Another voice, cold and bitter, said, they were supposed to be extinct. The High Chancellor looked out the window where the stars glowed softly. Then we must finish what our ancestors failed to do, no mercy this time. Back in Sol, humanity had no plans for mercy either. As the wreckage of alien ships drifted like ash, the surviving Conquered vessels fled toward the edge of the system. Rourke let them run. Not out of pity, out of strategy. Ghost, she said, transmit the message. A moment later, across the galaxy, the Terran broadcast began. Every frequency, every channel, every relay received the same signal. A human face appeared, Helena Rourke, framed by the light of burning stars. To the Conquered and all other listening species, she said. Her tone was calm, but her eyes burned. 50,000 years ago, you called it an armistice. You said humanity was broken. You said we were done. We are not broken. We are not done. We waited. We rebuilt. We remembered. You declared war. You will have it. The feed ended. And in every alien capital, silence followed. Even the children, who had grown up laughing at old human ghost stories, sat frozen in fear. Because the ghosts were real, and they were angry. Hours later, the remnants of the Conquered fleet gathered near the asteroid field of Ares, belt to regroup. Thousands of ships limped through space, their systems fried, their morale shattered. Admiral Cather stared at the wreckage around him. The once-proud Zykal dreadnoughts were now burning hulks. He clenched his mandibles. They will pay, he hissed. They cannot fight all of us. He turned to his tactical officer. Summon every fleet within 3 sectors. We'll crush them under numbers. But even as he spoke, a signal flared on his screen, another Terran fleet emerging from FTL, silent as the void. The human ships formed a perfect line across the asteroid belt, massive shadows with crimson lights glowing faintly on their hulls. Cather felt his blood run cold. No, that's not possible. How many? 30, his officer whispered. 30 ships. 30, Cather laughed, a dry, broken sound. 30 ships against 500,000. He didn't notice the way his officer's voice trembled. Admiral, they're called Titans. And then the stars lit up again. Back aboard the Valkyrie Lance, Rourke watched the new wave of enemy signatures flooding into Sol's space. She could feel it, the storm growing, the war to come. Her hands rested on the command console, steady and sure. The galaxy thought it could erase us, she murmured. But humans don't vanish, we endure. Outside her window, the stars glimmered like watching eyes. We are the spark they tried to smother, she whispered. Now we burn again. And as her fleet turned toward the next battle, the humans of Earth, the warriors of a forgotten age, grinned ruthlessly. Because war had finally come home. The galaxy burned. The conquered fleets that had entered Sol were gone, erased from existence. Across the stars, the survivors spread tales of impossible weapons and ships that moved like shadows. No one believed them. No one wanted to, because if the humans were truly back, then no world was safe. But denial could not stop what was coming. The conquered gathered its full strength at Ares' belt, a narrow stretch of space choked with asteroids and drifting metal. It was here in this broken field of rock and ruin that they would make their stand. 500,000 ships filled the void, dreadnoughts the size of cities, cruisers glowing with plasma light, fighters weaving between them like sparks. The galaxy's finest, the proudest, the last wall between the conquered and the dark. And then out of the silence, the Titans came. They appeared first as shadows on every sensor, their mass readings off the scale. 30 ships, only 30, but each one was larger than any vessel ever built by alien hands. They were old, ancient beyond reason, their hulls black and scarred, engraved with names in the dead tongue of old Earth: Titanus Leviathan, Archangel, Iron Faith, Prometheus ascending. They carried no flags, no signals, no need. The conquered officers watched in horror as the Titans drifted forward, slow and deliberate, like gods returning to claim their throne. Admiral Cather stood frozen on his bridge, his claws digging into the metal floor. This is impossible," he whispered. His science officer stared at the readings, voice trembling. "Each one has the firepower of an entire fleet. How did they build these?" Cather didn't answer, because deep down he already knew. Humans had not built them during peace. They had built them during extinction. On board the Titanus Prometheus ascending, Admiral Helena Rourke stood at the heart of a living storm. Her new command ship was more fortress than vessel, its corridors lined with glowing veins of ancient tech, its engines burning brighter than suns. Ghost's voice echoed softly through the chamber. "Enemy forces are preparing to engage. Estimated numbers, 500,000 ships. Probability of survival without loss, 93%. Rourke almost smiled. "Not bad odds." "Orders, Admiral." She stared into the abyss ahead. The conquered fleet stretched before her like an endless ocean of light. "Break the tide." The Titans opened fire. There were no warnings, no countdowns, only light. Beams of pure energy, wide as cities, cut through the void. Asteroids vaporized. Alien dreadnoughts melted like wax. The space between worlds became a furnace. The Titans didn't move fast. They didn't have to. Every shot they fired reshaped the battlefield. Cather screamed orders to dodge, to fire, to do something, but it was like throwing stones into a hurricane. His fleet's plasma storms struck the Titan's armor and vanished. Missiles detonated harmlessly against energy fields older than his species. And then the retaliation came. Thousands of smaller Terran ships poured out from the Titans, hulls, gunships, bombers, drones, and fighters that darted through the chaos with terrifying precision. They didn't fly in random swarms. They moved with the discipline of old human soldiers, the kind of unity that only comes from shared fury. Every formation, every maneuver, every strike was a memory of ancient wars. From the bridge of Prometheus ascending, Rourke watched the unfolding destruction in silence. "Sector 3 cleared," Ghost reported. "Sector 5, all hostiles destroyed." Confirming no survivors. The words rolled through the command deck like echoes of doom. Her officers said nothing. There was no joy in victory, only the steady rhythm of purpose. Humanity wasn't fighting to win glory. They were fighting to remind the galaxy what they had once feared. Far away in the conquered capital, the council chambers shook with anger and disbelief. 50,000 years of peace, cried the High Chancellor. 50,000 years and they do this. An elder alien, one of the few survivors of the First Terran War, spoke quietly from the shadows. "You call it peace," he said, "but it was only silence, and silence is never peace for them." The chamber fell quiet. He looked up, his ancient eyes filled with something close to pity. You should have left them alone. Back at Ares' belt, the battle became slaughter. Terran drones cut through cruisers like blades through water. Railguns hammered through shields. Explosions bloomed in every direction. Whole fleets tried to run, but the Terrans had already surrounded them. And then something new happened. From the belly of the Titanus Leviathan, a pulse of light spread outward, invisible to the eye but deadly to machines. The wave rolled across the battlefield, shutting down alien targeting systems, melting circuits, erasing code. Within seconds, half the conquered fleet was blind. Panic spread, ships collided, commanders screamed. Admiral Cather realized it was over. His fleet was dying, and there was nothing he could do. He turned to his first officer. "Send a message to the Council," he said bitterly. "Tell them the Terrans don't fight wars, they end them." Moments later, his ship vanished in a ball of white fire. When the battle ended, the silence was deafening. The asteroid belt was gone, reduced to glowing dust. Where 500,000 ships had once stood, only wreckage remained, and 30 Terran Titans, unscathed, drifting through the ruin. On the command deck of Prometheus Ascending, Rourke stood motionless. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, pale and sharp. "Report," she said quietly. "Enemy fleet destroyed," Ghost answered. "No Terran casualties." Rourke closed her eyes. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Transmit the recording to the conquered capital." "Message content." Her gaze hardened, all of it. She turned away from the burning stars. "Let them see what happens when they break their promises." The message reached every corner of the galaxy within a day. It showed the battle in full. The Conquered's proud fleets turned to cinders, their leaders begging for retreat, the Titans looming over the ruins like silent gods. Billions watched in horror, some in disbelief, some in awe. And then came the ending, Admiral Rourke's voice. "To all species of the Conquered," she said, "this was not an invasion. This was a reminder. You ended the armistice. You chose war. Now you will live with its end. We are humanity. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We endure." On planets across the stars, alien children wept. Commanders prayed. Civilizations that had never known fear suddenly felt it crawl under their skin. And in the dark, the humans of Earth prepared for the next step. The Titans turned their massive hulls toward the Conquered's heart worlds, engines burning like dawn. Humanity was coming, not to conquer, but to teach the oldest lesson in the galaxy. That peace is not given. It is earned through fire and steel and wrath. The battlefield drifted in silence. Ares' belt was gone, the asteroids, the mining colonies, the stations, all turned to dust by the fury of the Titans. The light from the explosions still shimmered faintly against the endless dark. And in that ghostly glow, the shape of humanity's fleet loomed large, black, and merciless. The Terran Titans stood in formation like mountain gods watching over a graveyard. Around them floated smaller ships, destroyers, frigates, carriers, a sea of iron and vengeance. Every vessel bore the same emblem, a white gauntlet gripping a broken chain. It was not just a symbol, it was a warning. Admiral Helena Rourke stood on the command bridge of the Titanus Prometheus Ascending. Her eyes were fixed on the data feed before her, millions of enemy life signs, now gone. Ghost, her AI companion, spoke quietly. "All enemy vessels have been neutralized. No resistance remains within the belt sector." Rourke didn't respond right away. She was thinking not about victory, but about what would come next. Humanity had been patient for 50,000 years. The Conquered had not. Now there would be no stopping what followed. "Send out recovery teams," she said finally. "Bring back any survivors, even them." Ghost hesitated. "Enemy combatants." "Yes," she said. "We'll remind them who we are and what we are not." Hours later, a small shuttle touched down inside the hangar of the Prometheus Ascending. Its ramp hissed open, revealing a single alien soldier in shattered armor, a mere Dominion captain, his 4 arms trembling as Terran Marines approached. He was dragged before Rourke, blood shimmering under the cold lights of the command deck. He looked up at her, a woman of flesh and steel, her face marked by old scars. "You are human," the alien rasped. Rourke nodded. "You came here to destroy us." The alien swallowed hard. "We thought you were gone. The galaxy said you were extinct." Rourke's eyes hardened. That was the mistake. He trembled. You could have stayed hidden. You could have lived in peace. Rourke leaned forward slightly. We did, for 50,000 years, but peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means waiting until we're forced to remember. The alien lowered his gaze. What will you do with us? She stared at him for a long moment before answering. We'll send you home. Let them know what they've awakened. The alien's breath caught. You'll let me live. Rourke turned away. One messenger is enough. When the alien ship left human space, the Concord received its final transmission. The recording showed endless wreckage, drifting corpses, and the colossal forms of the Terran Titans. It showed Admiral Rourke standing before a wall of stars, her voice steady and calm. You declared war, she said. You brought your fleets to our home, you called us extinct, you were wrong. We are the children of Earth, we are humanity, and we are done hiding. The message ended, leaving the galaxy in silence. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy erupted. World after world fell into chaos. Conquered propaganda failed to contain the truth. Every broadcast carried the same image, Terran warships cutting through fleets that had once ruled the stars. The proud species of the conquered began to fracture. Some called for surrender, others demanded vengeance, most simply fled. But vengeance cannot fight what it does not understand. In the outer systems, a massive fleet assembled, the last great armada of the conquered. 1,000,000 ships, drawn from every corner of known space, gathered near the twin stars of Elira. They called it the Wall. It was meant to be unbreakable. Their leaders spoke of strength and courage. They said humanity could not possibly endure another battle of that scale. They were wrong again. From the shadows of deep space, the Titans arrived, 30 black giants cutting across the stars like a storm. Behind them came the fleets of Mars, Titan, and the Belt, 1,000 smaller ships, rebuilt and reborn. Admiral Rourke stood once more on her bridge, staring at the impossible wall of light before her. One last lesson, she said quietly. Ghost's voice hummed. Target coordinates locked, all systems ready. Rourke looked at the faces of her officers, men and women from every corner of Earth, from every generation that had been told the same story, that humanity was finished. She raised her hand. Fire. The Battle of Elira began with a flash brighter than a sun. Project Helios fired again, its beam slicing through the void and splitting the wall in half. The Titans followed, their guns roaring as they tore into the heart of the conquered fleet. The shockwave shattered planets. Gravity itself twisted under the strain. Alien ships died faster than they could form ranks. Terran fighters dove into the chaos like avenging angels, cutting through cruisers with precision strikes. 1,000,000 alien weapons lit the dark. The Titans did not slow. The Iron Faith rammed through a dreadnought twice its size, breaking it apart like glass. The Valkyrie lance vanished into a swarm of enemy fighters and emerged untouched, leaving only wreckage behind. And then, in the midst of the carnage, the Titanus Prometheus ascending unleashed its final weapon. A silence fell. A pulse of light spread outward from its core, slow, shimmering, endless. When it touched the conquered fleet, it didn't destroy. It froze. Every ship, every system, every weapon stopped. Engines failed. Guns went cold. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Then across every channel, Rourke's voice came again, calm and terrible. Enough. The pulse faded. The battlefield went still. Human ships hovered over the crippled, conquered armada, their cannons ready but silent. We are not conquerors, Rourke said. We are survivors. You sought to erase us. Now you will remember us not as ghosts, not as myths, but as the reason you sleep in peace. In the aftermath, the conquered surrendered. Their leaders sent pleas across the void, begging for mercy. Rourke gave none, but she did something far worse. She spared them. Each world was marked, branded with the same warning humanity had carried through the ages. Remember. And so they did. Across the stars, whispers spread like fire. The humans had returned. They had won. But they did not celebrate. On Earth, the people stood under clear skies and quiet oceans, staring up at the stars that had once condemned them. There was no joy, only peace, heavy and cold. Admiral Rourke stood on a mountain overlooking the rebuilt cities of her home. The wind carried the distant hum of engines, the sound of a species preparing for the next dawn. She spoke softly, almost to herself. We didn't want war, we only wanted to live. Ghost's voice drifted through her earpiece, and now. Rourke looked to the horizon, where the first light of day touched the earth. Now, she said, we remind the stars why they feared us. The war was over. The conquered fleets were gone, their ashes drifted through the void, their empires cracked and hollow. Across the galaxy, broken worlds whispered the same word, trembling like a curse reborn. Humanity. For 50,000 years, the galaxy had told stories about them. The Terrans, the monsters of the ancient age, the ones who fought the gods and refused to kneel. They were legends told to frighten children, myths buried under time and arrogance. Now those stories had come true. In the great halls of Thalrun, the conquered capital, silence filled the council chamber. Once it had been a place of pride and splendor, towers of crystal, air alive with the hum of wisdom and power. Now it was filled with ghosts. Only a few of the High Council remained. The rest were dead or fled. The survivors gathered around a projection hovering above the center of the room, the final message sent by Admiral Helena Rourke. Her face flickered in the light, calm, human, unyielding. You ended the armistice. You broke your word. You tried to erase us. We have shown mercy once. Do not test it again. The message repeated, looping endlessly, as if the humans wanted to make sure no one forgot. High Chancellor Zyron, once proud, now trembling, looked around the circle of leaders. They spared us, she whispered. Why? An old warlord of the Zykal answered, voice hollow. Because they don't need to kill us. We already know what they can do. No one spoke after that. Outside, above Thalrun, the word remember still glowed across the planet's crust, carved by orbital fire, visible from space. A scar to last eternity. Across the stars, chaos spread like wildfire. In the colonies of the Mere Dominion, riots broke out as citizens destroyed statues of their old heroes, the ones who had once fought the Terrans. On the frozen moons of the Eltari, soldiers refused to leave their bunkers, terrified that the humans would appear at any moment. And on the outer rim, thousands of refugee ships fled from invisible shadows. Every flicker on their sensors, every whisper of static in their comms, sent them into panic. The humans didn't even have to fight anymore. Fear was doing their work for them. On Earth, the skis were quiet again. The Titans hung above the blue world like watchful guardians. Below them, humanity rebuilt cities of silver and light, stretching across continents that had been empty for ages. For the first time in thousands of years, children played under open skies without fear. The oceans sparkled, the forests grew back, and the air smelled of rain and hope. But even in peace, there was tension. Every human knew what they had done. Every human knew what it meant. The galaxy feared them, and for good reason. Admiral Helena Rourke stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus ascending. From orbit, she could see Earth below, glowing like a jewel in the darkness. She had seen many worlds burn, but none so beautiful as this one. Ghost's voice hummed softly through the air. Recon reports complete, no active threats detected in any sector. Rourke nodded, and the conquered. Fragmented, Ghost replied. Some factions talk of surrender, others of revenge, none act. Rourke stared at the stars. They will one day. Yes, Ghost agreed, but not soon. Rourke turned toward the window. Her reflection looked older now, tired but unbroken. They'll remember this war for 1,000 generations. That's enough. Ghost was quiet for a moment. Then it said, do you regret it? Rourke's gaze didn't waver. Number regret is for those who had a choice. We didn't. She placed her hand against the glass. They forced our hand. We just reminded them why that was a mistake. On a distant world far from any human fleet, an old alien historian sat in a quiet library, surrounded by ancient scrolls and digital archives. He was the last of his kind, a keeper of records. For centuries, he had studied the forgotten wars, the rise and fall of empires, the myths of the Terrans. Now, as he watched the recent footage, the Titans burning through fleets, the word remember etched into planets, he trembled. The old stories had always called humans the burning kind. Not because they burned others, but because they burned themselves, with passion, with rage, with hope. He whispered to himself, voice cracking, you cannot destroy fire, you can only hope it sleeps. He began to write a new entry in his records. The words were simple. The Terrans have returned. The galaxy bends once more under their shadow. They are not conquerors, they are reminders, and the reminder burns. Across the void, alien fleets began to vanish, not from war, but from surrender. Colonies dimmed their lights, shut down their transmissions, as if hopping to hide from human eyes. Trade routes went dark. Systems fell silent. Human ships didn't chase them. They didn't need to. The name Terran had become a weapon stronger than any cannon. But even among humans, there was unease. In the lower decks of the Valkyrie Lance, young officers spoke in whispers. "We won," one said, "but what if we've become what they feared?" An older engineer answered softly, "They feared us because we fought to survive. If survival is a crime, then we'll bear it." The younger man nodded but said nothing, because deep down he knew the galaxy wasn't just afraid of humanity's strength. It was afraid of their will. The will to fight, the will to rebuild, the will to rise again no matter how many times they were destroyed. In the conquered's shattered capital, a desperate message was sent into the void, a plea for peace, a voice trembling with humility and fear. "To the Terran command, to the children of Earth, we acknowledge your strength. We seek to rebuild together. Please, no more war." It reached Earth days later. Rourke listened to it in silence, her hands clasped behind her back. The voice on the recording was full of regret, the same regret humanity had once known too well. Ghost broke the silence. "What shall we reply?" Rourke looked out at the stars, the same stars that had once watched her people burn. "Send them a single word," she said. "What word?" "Remember." And so it was sent. One word across every channel, every frequency, every world. A word that carried the weight of all history. A word that froze empires and silenced armies. A word that meant peace and threat and truth all at once. Remember. In the centuries that followed, the galaxy never forgot. No one dared to invade another human world again. No one dared to break another treaty. The mere whisper of Terrans was enough to quiet wars before they began. The humans returned to their rebuilding, their exploring, their dreaming. But even in peace, they carried the same fire that had kept them alive. They were not gods, they were not monsters. They were simply human, and that was enough to make the stars tremble. And somewhere, out in the endless dark, the old historian's final words echoed through time. "They do not rule the galaxy, they simply live in it, but everyone else remembers that it belongs to them." The galaxy was quiet again. Too quiet. In the silence after the war, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The great fleets were gone. The proud empires of the conquered were dust. What remained of their worlds flickered like dying embers in the dark. And across that endless emptiness, humanity stood unchallenged. Admiral Helena Rourke walked alone through the great halls of the Prometheus Ascending. The corridors were quiet now, the hum of engines low and steady. The ship was more than metal, it was memory. Every corridor, every scar on its hull, carried the echo of 1,000 battles. Ghost's voice broke the silence. "Transmission from the conquered remnants, Admiral. They're requesting audience." Rourke paused, her reflection catching in the glass beside her. For a moment she saw herself, older, colder, a face carved by war. "Put them through," she said. A shimmer filled the air as a hologram appeared, a council of alien leaders, battered and afraid. The once great conquered stood bowed, stripped of their glory. Their eyes were dim, their voices trembling. The High Chancellor spoke first. "Admiral Rourke, we surrender. We accept any terms the Terran command demands." Rourke's expression did not change. "You already accepted them," she said, 50,000 years ago." The Chancellor lowered her gaze. "We were fools, we forgot." Rourke stepped closer to the projection, her tone low and cold. "You didn't forget. You stopped believing we were real. You thought fear could fade. You thought mercy was weakness." The alien's voice broke. "Then what will you do with us?" Rourke stared at them for a long moment before answering. "We will do what you never did. We will let you live." The council chambers on Thalrune burned for days after. Not from destruction, from shame. Across the remaining conquered worlds, leaders broadcast surrender messages to their people, pledging peace, swearing never to rise against humanity again. No one argued, no one resisted. Because every race had seen the recordings, the Battle of Ares Belt, the fall of Elira, the Titans carving Remember into planets. The message was clear. Humanity didn't conquer, humanity endured. And that endurance had become something greater than power. It had become law. Weeks passed. Rourke stood at the edge of the solar system, where the great fleet gathered one last time. The Titans hung in formation, a line of black silhouettes against the light of the distant sun. Around them, thousands of smaller ships floated silently, their crews waiting for orders that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Ghost spoke quietly. All enemy systems have ceased hostilities. The conquered fleets have disarmed. We've received pledges of allegiance from 712 worlds. Rourke said nothing. She looked out at the fleet, humanity's greatest creation, and felt something heavy settle in her chest. This was victory, and yet it did not feel like triumph. She walked into the command chamber, where the high command awaited, generals, admirals, and envoys from the scattered Terran colonies. They rose as she entered, their eyes following her every step. "The conquered is broken," said General Hassan. "Their people beg for peace. We could take their worlds, their technology, everything." Rourke stopped at the center of the room. "We could," she said, "and then what? We become them." The general frowned. "After what they did, do they deserve mercy?" Rourke's voice sharpened. "Mercy isn't for them, it's for us." The room fell silent. She turned slowly, meeting every gaze. "We are the last soldiers of an old world. We've carried its pain for 50,000 years. If all we leave behind is fear, then we've learned nothing." Her words hung in the air, heavy and true. Later that night, Rourke returned to her private quarters. She stood before a small glass case. Inside it, a single patch of faded cloth. The symbol of the old United Nations of Earth burned at the edges. She touched it gently. "This was supposed to mean peace," she whispered. "We turned it into war." Ghost's soft voice filled the quiet. "Peace was never given to us, Admiral. We built it. We defended it." Rourke smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time to stop defending and start living." The next day, she sent the final message. It was simple, direct. It was broadcast to every world, every station, every species still alive. Her voice was calm, strong, the voice of humanity. "To the peoples of the galaxy, the war is over. The conquered has fallen. Humanity does not seek your destruction. We seek your memory. We fought not for conquest, but for the right to exist, for the right to breathe free. You broke peace once, and you paid the price. We will not start another war, but understand this: if you raise a weapon against us again, there will be no next time. Let the past be your warning. Let the name of Earth be your lesson. We are humanity. We are not your masters, but we are your mirror. Remember what we became when you forced our hand, and remember what you still can be." The message ended, and the galaxy listened. On the ruined world of Thalrun, the old historian who had chronicled the wars knelt before a burning sky. His claws trembled as he copied the broadcast into his records. "This is the reckoning," he wrote. "Not of death, but of memory. They do not rule the stars, yet all stars bend around them. For the first time in our history, we are not afraid of their weapons, we are afraid of their silence." He looked up, and in the heavens above, faintly, he could still see the scar of Earth's warning carved into his world. Remember. Years later, the galaxy began to heal. Trade returned. Planets rebuilt. Even the shattered, conquered worlds began to find light again. But they never forgot. Every school taught the story of humanity. Every monument bore their mark. Even in songs and prayers, their name was spoken with reverence and fear. Children who once dreamed of alien heroes now whispered of human warriors, the eternal fire that could never be quenched. And above them all, the fleets of Earth still watched, quiet, patient, eternal. On the bridge of the Prometheus ascending, Rourke stood one last time. The war was behind her. The stars ahead waited to be rediscovered. Ghost spoke softly. "What now, Admiral?" She smiled faintly. "Now we build what they couldn't. And if they come again..." Rourke's gaze hardened. "Then they'll find we still remember." She turned to the window, where the Earth shone bright against the void. "Let them call us monsters," she whispered. "Let them call us gods, it doesn't matter. We are human, that's enough." The engines roared to life. The Prometheus ascending rose into the endless dark, carrying with it the last echo of a war that would never be forgotten. And for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy truly understood what it meant to see humanity, not as legend, not as myth, but as the reckoning that keeps the stars alive. 1,000 years had passed since the reckoning. The stars no longer burned with war. The galaxy was quiet now, not because it had forgotten, but because it remembered too well. The scars of the old conquered still glowed faintly on distant worlds, reminders of a lesson written in fire. No one dared speak of rebellion. No one dared test the silence. Above them all, humanity watched. They did not build an empire of conquest. They built an empire of presence. Where once alien fleets had ruled, now Terran envoys traveled, calm, silent, unstoppable. Their ships, sleek and black, drifted through every star system like sentinels of history. When they arrived on a world, the leaders gathered in reverence, not fear. They came not to demand tribute, but to remind. To speak the same word their ancestors had carved into the skin of planets. Remember, Earth had changed. It was no longer a wounded home rising from ruin. It was the heart of a civilization that stretched across light years. Cities of glass and stone touched the sky. Oceans shimmered with silver light from the orbital docks above. Children played beneath banners of blue and white, the colors of peace, not war. But under that peace ran something older, deeper, the steady heartbeat of vigilance. Humanity had learned what happens when peace forgets the price that bought it. And so they remembered. Every year across every colony, they recited the same words. We are the children of Earth. We endure, we remember. In the Hall of Nations, rebuilt on the ancient ground of Geneva, stood Admiral Helena Rourke's statue. Her face, carved in black stone, gazed upward toward the stars. At her feet, engraved in metal older than any species, were her final words. We are human, that is enough. Generations had come and gone, yet her legend never dimmed. She had become more than a commander. She was a symbol of survival, of wrath, of mercy. And though centuries had passed, every human officer carried her oath like a torch. Far beyond Earth, the Prometheus ascending still drifted among the stars. No longer a weapon, it was now a temple of memory, crewed by scholars, historians, and quiet guardians of the old ways. Its lights never went out. Its name was whispered in reverence. On its command deck stood a new admiral, a descendant of Rourke's bloodline. Admiral Elias Rourke. He was younger, softer around the eyes, but there was something in his gaze, that same steel, that same calm fury waiting beneath the surface. Ghost's voice, now evolved beyond any machine, still served the ship. Admiral, it said softly, a message from the Galactic Council. Elias turned. What do they want? They ask for your presence, a matter of fear. Fear, Elias frowned. Of what? Ghost's lights flickered. A new power rising in the outer systems. They call themselves the heirs of the conquered. Elias was quiet. For a long time he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was cold. Then they've forgotten. The council met on the neutral world of Orin Prime, a planet ringed with city lights and towering spires. Representatives from 100 species waited in the grand chamber. When the human admiral entered, they rose to their feet, not out of respect, but out of instinct. Elias Rourke walked with quiet confidence, his black uniform marked with the silver emblem of the Terran Command, a single star surrounded by the circle of Earth. Speak, he said simply. A trembling alien delegate stepped forward. Admiral, the heirs have built fleets. They speak of restoring the conquered's glory. They mean to challenge your people. The room fell silent. Elias said nothing. His eyes swept over the crowd, the descendants of those who once tried to erase his kind. He saw their fear. He saw their hope. And he pitied them. Finally, he spoke. We do not seek war, but if they bring it, they will learn what their ancestors already knew. He turned toward the stars beyond the window. The universe does not belong to humans, but it remembers who earned the right to live in it. When the Terran fleet arrived in the outer systems, the heirs of the conquered were waiting. 1,000 ships, shining with pride and arrogance, their banners proclaiming the return of the old order. They laughed when they saw the humans' small formation, a few hundred vessels led by the ancient Prometheus ascending. They did not laugh for long. The first strike was silent. A single beam of light, so pure and white it seemed holy, tore through the air's command ship. The explosion that followed painted the stars in gold and ash. The rest of the battle lasted only minutes. When it was over, the void was quiet again. The Prometheus drifted through the wreckage, engines burning softly. Elias stood at the viewing window. Ghost's voice filled the silence. "Shall I transmit a message to the survivors?" Elias nodded slowly. "Tell them what we always tell them. Remember." News of the destruction spread across the galaxy. The heirs vanished as quickly as they had risen. And once again the stars bowed to peace, not out of conquest but out of memory. The name Terran became more than fear, it became balance. Every species that rose to power now measured itself against humanity, not in weapons, but in will. Even the youngest civilizations whispered, "Be strong, or the humans will teach you strength." On Earth, under a sunrise that painted the sky in gold, Elias stood before Rurk's statue. The air was calm, the city below alive with laughter and light. For the first time in his life, he allowed himself to smile. A voice behind him, Ghost, projected as a shimmer of light. "They will never forget us." Elias nodded. "That's the point." Ghost's tone softened, "And when no one needs to remember anymore." Elias looked up at the stars. "Then we will finally rest." Centuries later, when the last of the Titans drifted into the void and the Prometheus ascending powered down its engines for the final time, the galaxy still remembered. Even after humanity faded from the stars, their words remained carved into planets, sung in stories, whispered in prayer. "We are the children of Earth. We endure. We remember." And long after their cities turned to dust, long after the last light of mankind went out, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, afraid that if it forgot, humanity might rise again. For in the silence between stars, their echo still lived. A whisper, a promise. "We are humanity. We are the fire that never dies."